And we're back here on Straight Out of the Cannon with me, Scott Cannon, here on WLTH 1370 AM. That's 92.7 in the FM dial. If you're nasty, it is 7:34 in the PM here on Friday, August the 1st, 2025. The future's here. The future's now. Yes, it is. And the future ain't looking so great, folks. I'm laughing, but not because it's funny. Massive job cuts seem to be here. A lot of people posited that this would happen, you know, after Elon Musk and Donald Trump sort of seized our government, decided they were going to just take a hatchet to it. But yeah, we seem to be at the point where the rent's due. Massive job cuts have been a significant trend across many industries, especially in tech in recent years. But overall, the first 6 months of in the first few months of 2025, things have sort of accelerated. So in tech, we've seen at least 95,000 workers in the last year laid off. And this trend has sort of snowballed into 2025 with 413 layoffs impacting 96,861 people. 500 people lose their jobs in tech a day in 2025. So, you know, tech giants like Google, Amazon, Meta, Intel are cutting jobs to streamline operations, reduce costs, and shift the focus towards artificial intelligence. I told you guys a few years ago that AI was coming. I told you guys. You ain't believe me, but I told you AI was coming for all of us. I just saw a story on TV a few days ago where they're talking about they're actually replacing models in like Vogue magazine with AI models. Like the models are artificial intelligence now. They have artificial intelligence models now. So for a long time, it's funny that when working class people are losing their jobs over the last 20, 30 years, a lot of people, especially in the liberal Democratic Party, said, learn the code. Learn the code. That's gonna help you. Learn the code. Well, you know, automation may have taken a lot of our jobs, but for you guys, it's coming as well. Even if you're in entertainment, even if you're in media in some capacity, like me, you know, artificial intelligence is coming. Trucks, you're going to have trucks driven by artificial intelligence. They're already here. AI trucks are already here. And other industries, sectors like media, finance, retail, even healthcare and education have seen significant layoffs. For example, Johns Hopkins University cut over 2,000 jobs due to a loss of $800 million in U.S. aid funding. You know, so a lot of these jobs are coming due to just restructuring. A lot of companies, they say, overhired during the COVID-19 pandemic to meet heightened demand, only to find themselves overstaffed as economic conditions normalize. So you're seeing a lot of technological shifts. The rapid adoption of artificial intelligence is reshaping workforces. Companies like IBM and TCS, which is Tata Consultancy Services, are cutting jobs, particularly at the mid and senior level roles, to pivot towards AI-driven operations. Again, it's AI. Ooh, man. declining profits and market demand are prompting layoffs in a lot of companies. Even in retail and luxury sectors, they are cutting jobs. And so this is our new normal. This is our new normal. The Trump administration's reduction of U.S. aid personnel from 10,000 to 300 led to significant losses, impacting both domestic and international roles. So we saw that happening. Now, see, the thing is, U.S. aid, it was also used by our government to help overthrow governments, to help propagandize populations all over the world. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that U.S. aid was the best thing in the world. Hell, a lot of Africans were celebrating the U.S. getting rid of U.S. aid. Now, yeah, they did fund like AIDS medicine for some people in South Africa, but they also did a lot of propagandizing as well. And in probably next week we're going to talk about Operation Mockingbird, because our current director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, just revealed yesterday that Operation Mockingbird is still going on. If you don't know Operation Mockingbird, it was a program that came out in the church committee in the 1970s in Congress that found out that the CIA literally had people in the media on its payroll to push propaganda, State Department propaganda. And Tulsi Gabbard just basically confirmed that it never ended, that it's still going on. And so when you wonder why the corporate media, a lot of these different news outlets have the same talking points over and over again, you can almost lay them on top of each other, That's why. And a lot of that was funded by U.S. aid. And so since so much of our media is propaganda, and so much of media in the world, like I said, around the world, especially in the global South, was propaganda funded by U.S. aid, I can't say that all of that is a bad thing. Even though I am sorry to see people lose their jobs, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's good that all these people had jobs that were dependent on, propaganda from the State Department. That's not happening. But what is a really scary thing is that NASA's workforce is facing a nearly 20% cut. And I think a lot of people just think of NASA as, oh, they go to the moon. They go into space. Well, we need to focus on what's going on Earth right now. But let me tell you, that's not all they do. Did you know that NASA invented satellite TV? That's public sector. A lot of people like to say, oh man, without the private sector, you wouldn't have anything. All the innovation comes from the private sector. That's complete nonsense. A lot of the inventions that we use on a daily basis here come from the public sector, like satellite TV. NASA invented that. Okay? NASA invented satellite TV. So if you have direct TV right now, or something similar, the dish, you could thank NASA for that. Also, water filters. I use zero water filters. Water filters came from NASA. Braces. If your teeth have braces, that came from NASA as well. Duct tape. I know we all use duct tape. Duct tape came from NASA. So there's always this sort of capitalistic propaganda where it says, oh, nothing will ever be invented, unless we just allow people to become billionaires and just sort of monopolize wealth. That's just not true. NASA has invented lots of stuff, and a lot of the medicines that come from Big Pharma were paid for by us. The R&D was done, paid for by us, the taxpayers. And so that's important to state. So when you cut NASA, you're not just saying we won't, we're not going to the moon no more. Whatever the next inventions are out there, the next duct tape, the next water filters, the next satellite TV, that could be also on the chopping block. There's a lot of things that NASA has innovated or made better that we use in our lives on a daily basis. So when you cut NASA, you are driving a stake in the heart of the American public in a lot of ways. So I think it's important to state that. They are not just about, well, we want to go to the moon and just, mess around on the moon. No. NASA very much has been one of the most important programs the U.S. government has ever created for the living standards here of the American public. And people around the world. People around the world are using satellite TV. People around the world are using water filters and braces and duct tape. So that's important to say. We're seeing a lot of the health care centers cutting jobs. We're seeing a lot of the healthcare. So the U.S. has seen this rise in job cuts from 48,000 in June to 62,000 in July. And of course, Donald Trump, our current president, how do you think Donald Trump reacted? How do you think Donald Trump reacted to this disappointing news about the job market? Do y'all think he handled this with class and dignity? Or do you think he did something irrational and completely out of step with reality? I'll wait. He fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's what he did. After he heard about the July jobs report, he did not say, well, maybe I did something here that could have caused all of this. No. He fired the woman. He fired the woman who is the commissioner of Bureau of Labor Statistics after her report indicated that only 73,000 jobs were added, far below the expectation of 110,000 jobs, with downward revisions to prior month's figures and the unemployment rate going up. So, of course, Donald Trump never one to disappoint when it comes to just showing his whole behind. But it's almost time for me to get out of here. I only got about 10 minutes left before Dr. Williams comes in with the 2x4 like Hacksaw Jim Duggan and kicks me out personally. So before I go, I wanted you guys to listen to this woman who is online. Let me see what her name is. I can't see what her name is, but she's a older white lady and on TikTok, and she actually did a video where she's talking about why so many of her people continue to vote against their own best economic interest. And it's very interesting. Again, I don't support the Democratic or the Republican parties. I vote third party in presidential elections, and will continue to as long as both parties are irredeemably corrupt. But this lady specifically talks about why people are drawn, why her people, particularly older white people, are drawn to MAGA. This is just her opinion, But I think that I think it's very interesting what she had to say. Her name is Kelly. I think it's Kelly Sanders. So let me see. Let's hear what she has to say about it.
Why, oh why do poor white people vote against themselves time and time again? They vote for Trump and the other MAGA politicians only to have every promise broken, prices go up, social supports evaporate. Here's why. First, remember what I talked about recently, the psychological wage of whiteness. That term was coined by W.E. Du Bois to describe poor white folks being paid with social status rather than decent living conditions. They're convinced by the elites that they're better than black folks, better than immigrants, Latinos, LGBTQ folks. They're convinced that being white puts them in the same league as the elites. Of course, the elites know otherwise, but the poor whites buy it because they're grasping at straws. Second, they are convinced that the people they're supposedly better than are the big threat in their lives. Not the rich, not the corporations or the politicians, but immigrants, black folks, welfare queens, LGBTQ, criminals, you know, the usual scapegoats. Third, the elites promise protection to poor white folks. A politician comes along and says, I'll keep those people in their place, or I'll kick them out, or I'll lock them up, or more politely, I'll defend your values. They don't say, I'll make your life better. Well, they say it, they just don't mean it. They'll say, I'll make sure they don't get ahead of you. Fourth, they vote for the punishment, not the policy. When a law gets passed that slashes public housing or school funding or food aid, they think, good, that'll stop those lazy freeloaders. And they do some mental gymnastics that make them believe it's worth losing those things for their own families in order to see those problematic black people and immigrants and so forth being punished. It gets to a point where just seeing those guys being punished is reward enough, which is pretty sick, but that's how behavior works. Their housing, schools, and groceries are on the chopping block too, but they blame that on Biden. Always a scapegoat. They get hit by the same policies they were told would punish the others, and they blame the wrong people. The system fails them, but they've been trained to blame the scapegoats, not the cause, which is the rich people, the people they voted for. So they think the problem is still those people, not the fact that they were personally manipulated by the people they voted for. They're basically saying, I'll take the hit as long as you don't help them, or worse, as long as you hurt them. That is the psychological wage Du Bois was talking about, the trade-off between material security for racial status. And that's a crying shame, folks. One share, like, save, and comment.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. I've heard many people say for many years that if America was a mostly white country, we'd have universal health care. We would. That the reason that we don't have universal health care in this country is because to a lot of, white people, especially right-wing white people, they don't like the idea of black people having it too. And a lot of them would much rather live in a society where they themselves pay the cost for being economically and politically exploited, as long as they keep me from getting universal health care. They're okay with going without a job as long as I don't have a job. It's funny, I'm currently reading this book called The Black Worker and Organized Labor. It's about the history of organized labor in the United States. and in relation to black people. And it's crazy because a lot of people don't know that black people dominated the trades in this country in the 19th century. You know, after slavery ended, there were black people all over America working as carpenters and electricians, all these things, all these trades that we associate with you know, white groups, white people now. Black people work those trades. But what happened was, in the turn of the 20th century, as immigrants started to come here from Europe, they banded together and they worked to kick black people out of the trades. And what actually happened was that by kicking black people out of the trades and by keeping black people out of labor unions, they were actually driving down wages for themselves. So there was this great labor leader, maybe the best labor leader this country's ever had, named Samuel Gompers. He was the head of the AFL-CIO. He goes to the AFL, the American Federation of Labor. He goes to his base and he says, look, not allowing black people in your union has kept wages low because they are a permanently low-wage group of people. And so by not allowing them into the union, people are allowed to hire them at a much lower rate than they'd have to hire you at. So it's actually driving down your wages to not have black people in your unions. And it's actually keeping a lot of you out of work by not allowing black people in your unions. So he spends much of the late 19th century and early 20th century trying to convince white people in his labor union to allow black people in the union so that their wages can go up and so that they can keep their jobs. And so he says, look, if you don't let black people in the union, you're going to lose your jobs because they're going to keep hiring the people outside of labor, the scab labor, the desperate black people and immigrants, if you don't let them in the union. So you got to let black people in your union. Do you know what they said? They said, we'd rather lose our jobs. We'd just rather not have jobs than to let black people in the union. We'd much rather lose wages than let black people in our union. That is what you're dealing with. That is what we've always been dealing with. People who will hurt themselves in order to hurt you. And that's all there is to say about that.